Hello, Kylie. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thank
Kylie is a wife, a mama to two very energetic boys, um, no longer an practicing vet nurse, but a personal trainer, Pilates teacher, and Equa Pilates instructor, just to name a few things that you do.
few hats.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just a few. So I'm really, really excited to talk to you today. We met when I decided to start doing Pilates with you, and I had you as my beautiful instructor, which I just absolutely
Yes.
loved. So thank you for jumping on to an interview with me today.
No
Um,
problem.
what I'd love to talk about is stress and anxiety. So that was kind of one of the reasons as to why I started practicing with you. And as we have deepened our friendship, we have realized that we're quite similar in quite a few ways.
Yes, which is helpful.
Yes. Yeah,
We
100%.
can play.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
When you think that you're a bit crazy, you just like can talk to someone and go, oh, okay, I'm not
yeah,
that crazy anymore.
that's right. That's right. We're all crazy together.
Well, yeah, pretty well. Honey, I would love to, I guess, go back to the start
Hmm.
of how you got into personal training and started your Pilates studio, and what that transition was like.
Okay. So for about 13 years, I was a equine nurse, and I loved my job, and I loved what I did. But I found that I was very stressed at the particular place that I was at that stage, 13 years in, and I was married and we were thinking about starting a family. So I decided to lessen my role there. I took a nursing role rather than a head nursing role, which I was in, and I found that the lack or the lessening of stress meant that I then fell pregnant, which was great because we'd been trying for just a few months. And so I had my first baby. I was quite into fitness as well, leading up to my birth and thereafter. And so I thought, well, I don't know how long I'm going to want to nurse for. So I'll become a personal trainer as well, and I'll see where that takes me. So I did that in between baby one and baby two. And I had baby number two, and I decided I did not want to go back to nursing just because it was night shift and on call and that sort of thing. So I also realized that standard personal training was quite tough on my body, and having had then two children, that I couldn't keep up running and lifting weights with the same vigor that I had once. And I felt like pregnancies had taken a little bit of a toll on my body, and I wanted to find something that still serviced what I needed but was a little bit kinder to me. So I decided to get into Pilates because I knew it was great for pregnancy rehabilitation or post-pregnancy rehabilitation. Um, but what I didn't realize was that it was going to be great for horse riding and horse riders, which is also a big passion of mine. So I found that it was helpful for both of those. And I decided to do away with a lot of the just basic PT stuff and really latch onto the Pilates. And so bought a reformer and offer reformer one-on-ones as well as group Pilates.
And
Yes.
that's how we met.
That's how we met. Yeah, you were my first reformer client.
Was I?
Yeah, yeah, very
Oh,
first.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't know that you came to me for stress and anxiety relief.
Oh, look at that. Still learning
Yeah,
about each other.
that's right.
So, going back to stress and anxiety, how
Yeah.
did Pilates help you during that time of being, a first time mum, deciding that you didn't necessarily want to go back to work, then having your second baby, and they're quite close together?
Yeah, they were 2.5 years apart. Yeah, two
Mhm.
and a half years apart. Um, well, actually, I got into Pilates because I was worried about pelvic floor health and pelvic floor tone and that sort of thing. And what I didn't realize was that I had quite a strong pelvic floor already, and doing Pilates actually over strengthened my pelvic floor, which I didn't realize initially until some way down the track. And I realized that it was all linked up with my anxiety and the over holding of my abdominals and the over holding of my pelvic floor. So it's made me a much more aware Pilates instructor now.
Yeah.
So I guess I didn't really link them up. I just knew that I wanted something that was good for my body, and I was quite a stressy and anxious person. And so initially I didn't think Pilates is for anxiety, but in the months and years that have followed me being told I was highly anxious and having heart palpitations and that sort of thing, I've found a way to use it to help with my therapy, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that the weight loss, the heart palpitations, the worrying about situations, waking up with a racing heart every time my children made a noise during the night, feeling completely overwhelmed by life, having lost my appetite and having no cycling or periods for years after my first child was born were all symptoms and signs of stress and anxiety. So yeah, you live and learn, don't you? And so Pilates is just one of the things that has helped with that. And it's helped in making me a lot more body aware and a lot more in control of my breathing, and the ability to help to activate and deactivate my core and my pelvic floor, and to slow my breathing and to slow my heart rate. Yeah, so that, I mean, Pilates in itself has not cured me, but it has helped, along with things like just general exercise, walking, jogging, riding a bike, counselling, which I did initially straight after I was told that I had severe anxiety. Just recently, meditation, which I was told, Jackie has actually helped me with that. I was told over 12 months ago that meditation would be very helpful, but I wasn't in the right headspace to take it on. I looked into it and I did a few free sessions and I thought, I'll be fine. I don't need that. But just recently I started doing it and I have felt that it's helped a lot. Also, lowering my sugar intake, which I find incredibly difficult, has a big impact on my anxiety. So for one example is that my favourite thing to do is to sit on the couch at the end of the day, watch my favourite show, which is horrible trash, and eat some chocolate. Yeah. And I know that if I eat chocolate, the following morning I will wake up with a racing heart and with anxiety and heart palpitations that I may not have had for months or weeks prior. All sugar.
Wow.
Yeah, so those are the things that have helped for me.
Yeah. That's insane that sugar has such an immediate effect on you.
For me it does. Within 20, 40 minutes of having it, I can feel my heart rate has already risen. But it's not until the following morning, because I always have it at night. Yeah. Because that's the least helpful time for me to have it. Then I always wake up the next morning with little panic attacks and things.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. But and this is what I love, is your level of awareness.
That without a doubt has been the biggest thing that I've got from Pilates, is an increased level of awareness about my body, about how I feel, about what things affect me in what ways. It's a huge awareness tool.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what I love about these interviews, is just getting that little nugget of wisdom from one woman and a little nugget from over here, and reading this blog post and just creating that toolbox of, like you said, awareness tools that you can just reach for in those stressful, anxious moments to just really help you.
Yeah.
So
how did it help you?
Great question.
What's your story?
Yeah, and so one of the reasons why what I really loved about doing Pilates, so when we were doing our reformer sessions, is that for that 1 hour, I was fully focused and fully present. And that's what I think, especially reformer, I really loved that because you have to be focusing on your core and focusing on pulling this arm or that leg, and there's no room for any other thoughts in your mind at all. You just have to be fully focused on your body. So I absolutely love it for that reason. Absolutely love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Stops the
And
mind wandering.
yeah, 100%. And it's, that hour that you're there in a session, you're just present. You're fully focused, fully there. But through doing that, we recognized that I actually hold my stress in lots of places that I wasn't expecting. So I knew this one. I was completely aware that I held stress in my neck and my shoulders. And I think for a lot of us corporate workers, ex corporate workers, those who are at a desk all of the time, like I recognize that I used to sit at my computer like this, just really stressed and awful. But there were quite a few other places where I was holding stress in my body. So, from your clients who might not necessarily be coming to you for stress and anxiety, they may not have connected those dots yet. Where do you see it being affected in people's bodies?
So usually one of two ways, or usually, or occasionally both ways. People will either be breath holders. So they usually find it difficult to transition from belly breathing to rib cage breathing, because they're constantly holding the stress in their rib cage and only breathing down in their abdomen. That's what I see probably most frequently. So I really focus on getting people to open up through the rib cage. We use tactile cues, like putting my hands either side of the rib cage, which you can do yourself. You can just place your own hands on your own rib cage. Breathe out, opening them right up, which is actually a much harder thing to do if you haven't practiced it than it looks. So that's one, and equally making sure that one side opens just as much as the other side does, because it can often be tacky or sticky on one side and only open on the other. And so breathing's a big one. And the other one is that there's a lot of women, particularly those that have had children, who struggle to hold the pelvic floor or have enough tone in the pelvic floor. But on the flip side, for anxious, stressy types, a lot of us are holding our pelvic floor up way too hard already. And the ability to figure out how to drop it down and give yourself a little bit more room to relax your pelvis and to breathe down into your pelvis are a big one as well. Yeah. So, I guess if I were to give two pieces of advice, it would be to work on switching from abdominal to ribcage breathing and vice versa, and to find out whether your pelvic floor is in need of strengthening, or on the flip side, which no one really talks about, in need of letting go a little. Yeah.
How would someone go about working out if they need to tighten or let go of their pelvic floor?
So if you were to, I can't really demo this, can I? Because I'm seated. But if you were to imagine that someone was laying on their back, feet flat on the floor, knees bent at hip distance apart, they could place their two sets of index and next fingertips on the insides of their hip bones. Perhaps I should stand up. Should I stand up?
Yeah, go.
Try to get my pelvis in the right spot. So they're going to find their two sets of hip bones, pop their fingertips on the insides of their hip bones. Imagine that I'm laying on my back here. And then you're going to imagine that you've got a T drawn on your abdomen. So top of the T runs from one hip bone to the other, and that relates to your deep abdominals. Bottom of the T runs from the center of that line down to your pubic bone, and that relates to your pelvic floor. So to test how strong or weak you are in those, you keep your fingertips on the insides of the hip bones. We're going to think about the bottom of the T first. You're going to draw your pelvic floor up as hard as you can, like you're stopping from going to the toilet. And you should feel tightening underneath those two sets of fingertips. And as well as the tightening, you want to make sure that it's tightening evenly on both sides, because most people are weaker on one side than the other.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do it a few times, you'll get a better sense of how strong or weak it is. If you're not feeling much under there, it indicates that you're probably a little bit weak through the pelvic floor. And if you're feeling lots and it takes you almost nothing to ramp it on, then you could potentially be a little bit too overactive in your pelvic floor.
Mm-hmm.
And then the top of the T, relating to those deep abdominals, you would again keep the fingertips on the insides of the hip bones and scoop the belly button down towards the spine. And again, you'd feel even tightening, hopefully even tightening underneath both sets of fingertips.
Mm-hmm.
And that would give you a gauge of how well you can activate your transverse abdominis, or the big deep muscles near to your spine.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
No worries.
So while we're talking about those muscles in there, for those of us who are particularly stressy, who do hold a lot of stress in those areas,
yes,
please tell us about our fear muscle.
Yeah, so our fear muscle, a lot of people haven't heard it called their fear muscle, but it's your psoas muscle. And I actually have a really great diagram of this that I don't have right here with me, but that's not helpful. It is a big set of muscles. You've got psoas major and psoas minor. So the psoas minor is a smaller muscle and the psoas major is a larger muscle. They're interwoven and interconnected, and they basically run from the base of your rib cage, where your diaphragm or your breathing muscle is, mm-hmm. and they attach your breathing muscle all the way down to the front of your hips. So if your psoas is tight, or your fear muscle is tight, it will crunch you up into a little ball like this in an exaggerated form. So if we're fearful and we're tight, we feel like we're being attacked by a bear, and so our instinct is to do this. Mm-hmm. So whether you feel like you're doing this or not, if your psoas is overactive or it's tight, it's pulling you down. It equally might be drawing the thigh up, because mm-hmm. it's tightening through the front of the hip as well. So ultimately we're trying to roll ourselves into a little ball, mm-hmm. and protect ourselves, because we're fearful not of a bear eating us anymore, because we're not cave women, but of some sort of threat in our lives. Yeah. Whether that's a perceived threat or a real life threat. Mm-hmm. So if you sleep in the fetal position, or if you find it difficult to stretch the front of your hips, or if you find it difficult to lift your chest and breathe deeply into your rib cage, all possible indicators of a tight psoas or tight fear muscle. Mm. And there are ways to release your psoas. Lots of different options you can do, some laying on your back, some laying on your front. I like to use they're not big actually, they're about this size latex balls, quite hard latex balls, and you can place them in areas underneath your ribs and just inside your hip bones, and lay on them to mm-hmm. help release the psoas. You just need to be careful about the placement, that you're not putting them on major vessels and cutting off important blood supplies, and you would never lay on them for longer than a few minutes at a time. Yeah. So I would recommend that if you were going to do that yourself at home, that perhaps you would talk to or research that prior to doing it.
Yeah. And I was just like blown away when we discovered that I was very tight through there. But it makes total sense, doesn't it? You know, and exactly like you mentioned, we're not cave women anymore, but our body still thinks that we are. And so whenever that adrenaline kicks in, whenever we go into flight or fight, our body still thinks that we are fighting for our life.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Needing to protect ourselves.
Yeah. And so our body it goes into that automatic protection. that we're walking around, you know, with our tight shoulders and our tight pelvic floor and tight
Hip
everything.
flex. Yeah. And it makes sense, because if you were being attacked by a wild animal, that's how to protect your internal organs. So that's, even though that doesn't apply to your boss being nasty or your children giving you a hard time, it's still what we do to protect.
Yeah, 100%. So you've already mentioned some other techniques that have been really, really helpful for you in terms of, you know, just trying to reduce that stress and increase that awareness so that you can reach for those tools to support you. But if we bring it back to Pilates, what would your recommendation be for women who are recognizing that they are starting to have a few stress symptoms going on in their body and want to start working through it?
As in what sort of exercise they would do, or what type of Pilates they would do, or
Oh, hit us with everything.
okay. Well, if you live in an area where there is a big enough population that they would put on something like this, then I would look for Pilates for anxiety, or Pilates for, you know, stress relief, because they will be targeted exercises for that very reason. If, like us, we don't live in such populated areas, then I would go to someone in a one-on-one sense, tell them your symptoms or your feelings, and they can tailor a program exactly for you. And so if it were me and you had said to me, as when you arrived, that you had stress and anxiety, I would assess you for tight hip flexors, tight pelvic floor, tight psoas, and then from there I would create a program where we looked at lengthening your psoas muscle, releasing you with the latex ball releases, working on lengthening your hip flexors. Obviously you would still do a strength program as well, but I like to make sure that people are releasing in areas where it's required first, so that then we can target muscles that need activating. So quite often, if someone is overusing their hip flexors and their psoas, they will struggle to activate their gluteals or their bottom, or they have no bum because they've never used those muscles. So I would release first, and then we would go into a program that looked heavily at glute activation and glute work. That's just an example.
Yeah. And like, that's such an awesome point, that you can be working so hard on a certain area, but if you're blocking yourself, you're not going to have the results that you would like. So for women who might be just wanting to increase their health and wellness, and they're finding that they're coming up against lots of blocks, would Pilates and getting a health assessment like you talk about be something that they should look into?
I think so. Like with every field, there are people who are very good at what they do, and then people who, you know, will just give you a generic program and go, off you go. So I think, like a doctor, like a vet, like, you know, you need to find the right person for you. And then once you find the right person that you click with, then I'm sure that they would be very good at developing a program specifically for you. I wouldn't recommend group reformer classes or mat work Pilates classes, because it is very generic. It's still great for overall health and wellness, but if you're looking for a specific, you know, treatment, for want of a better word, for the way that you're feeling and in order to make you feel better, then I think you really need that one-on-one time.
Yeah, and I totally agree. You know, like, I've been to some group classes and they're fantastic. They're still amazing. You still feel as though you're absolutely working your whole body. But doing our one-on-one sessions were just so much more powerful, because exactly that, you can focus on those areas where you can see my stress creeping back in, and help to like fully start retraining the body, which is just incredible.
Well, I do group classes, so I'm certainly not against group classes, but I know that if I had you in my group class, I would never have known that you didn't breathe the way that we wanted you to breathe, or that you were tightening your psoas muscle, because you just don't, you've got, say, 12, 15 people in a class. You just don't physically have the time to get around to every person with that sort of detail.
Yeah.
You can give short cues here and there and they'll still benefit, but not that specifically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel like you've given us so many good little juicy bits to just start.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
About. Have you got any final thoughts for people who might be struggling with stress and anxiety?
I think that, and coming from a personal point of view, I am the sort of person that would sit back and wait for okay, if I were in the position where I was thinking, oh, maybe it would be a benefit to me to go and do a Pilates one-on-one, I would wait for months and months and months to convince myself that that's what I should do. Where I would get the benefits much quicker if I just went, you know what, give it a go, and if it's not for me, then I'll stop. It's that fear of stepping outside of your comfort zone and trying something that, oh, maybe it won't work. Well, maybe it won't, but why not give it a go? And this is total pot kettle. I'm working on this. But try it, and if you don't like it, don't do it, rather than don't try it at all.
Yeah,
that would be my because it's such a stress and anxiety mentality that either I'm not good enough to do that, or I might not be good at it, or they might judge me, or I won't do it perfectly. Well, probably not, but I'm sure they won't judge you for not doing it perfectly, and that's why you're there. So, and that applies to life, I think, rather than just Pilates.
Yes.
Just jump in, and you can always stop, rather than don't jump in at all.
Yeah, exactly right. Like you said, you have to try it to know that it's not for you.
That's right. And Pilates isn't going to suit everyone. Some people like yoga more. Some people like sweating it out, running down the road more. That's fine. I'm not here to convince everyone that Pilates is for them, but maybe it is. Give it a crack.
Exactly. And it's made such a massive difference to me. And just the level of awareness, I went to Pilates thinking that I was quite body aware, but some of the things that, like not breathing properly and all of my tight muscles, really just helped create that deeper level of awareness that you're able to then bring into your life as well.
Yeah. And to be fair, you are quite body aware. But it's just made you more body aware, I think. And you are open to constructive cues.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Because how are we going to get better otherwise? That's
right. Yeah. Because it's never a judgment or a criticism. It's just hey, why don't you try this? Open your rib cage up a little bit more there. It's never from a judgment point. It's from a, hey, how can we make this better?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Not that you're not good enough, but let's just keep improving.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you so much for having a chat with us. For those people who are super ready to try something new and to see if doing Pilates can help with their body awareness, you're based in the Lockyer Valley.
I am, yes.
So for those people who are in the Lockyer Valley, how can they get in contact with you?
They can message or text or call me, or they can visit my website or Facebook page. So my business name is Made to Move Pilates and PT. So you can either Google that, or you can look it up on Facebook, and it should come up no worries. My name is Kylie Harris. So my name should be somewhere there as well. So yes, don't think I have to give you my contact number, but it should all be on both of those if you'd like to look it up. And equally, if you don't live in this area, then look for someone who does do what I do where you are. There's lots of us around, and I'm sure you'll find a good one somewhere that will help you out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us.
No problems. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.